Oh, we got some breaking news for you this morning on CBS Sports HQ with the Morning Buzz, and not good news when it comes to QB1 in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow, our Jonathan Jones reports that the star QB is going to need surgery to repair a turf toe injury that we saw on Sunday, which will sideline him for about 3 months. That likely means backup quarterback Jake Browning, who we saw yesterday help the team move back into that win column at 2-0. He will be QB1 until Burrow comes back, but right now it looks like it means a potential return by the end of the regular season. But take a look at this. This isn't anything new for Cincinnati. They've had numerous cases back in 2020, the knee injury where he missed 6 games, 2023 with that wrist, and of course now you got the toe, the turf toe, and that question mark because we do not know when he likely will return. We'll see what happens, but take a look at it. The first time we'll see Cincinnati without Joe Burrow happens to be on CBS Week 3 at Minnesota against the Vikings, and then you just pick your poison when we might see him on that second side, the second half of the season for Cincinnati. All right, welcome to the Morning Buzz. I'm Brandon Bailey. That's Zach Aldridge, of course. Leger Douzable, and Carthon, Jonathan Jones. We are presented by Geico. Switch and save. Get more with Geico. And JJ, of course, I want to start with you. The news of Burrow out for 3 months. We don't know the timetable, but your reaction to that news.
This is what the Bengals were fearing yesterday. It was really where this was going heading into the overnight and then, of course, waking up. And they wanted to go ahead and execute whatever the plan was as quickly as possible. You know, don't wait around. This is going to be 3 months. Every day could absolutely matter in this case for Joe Burrow, who hopes to make his return for a playoff contending Bengals team at some point in the month of November, likely after Thanksgiving. Here's what I know. Turf toe, obviously, it has a name that a lot of people don't associate with being very serious. This is as severe a turf toe injury as you're going to find in the NFL. Brock Purdy may miss 1 game, maybe 2. Joe Burrow is going to miss maybe 3 months because of this injury and the severity of it. So what is next for the Cincinnati Bengals? You mentioned Jake Browning. They do have Jake Browning. Jake Browning is going to start for the Bengals in Week 3. There's no question about that. But they've seen Jake Browning in extended duty. And this is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Is Jake Browning going to be the guy that can carry them for 10, 11, 12 games so that when Joe Burrow finally does return in December, they actually can sniff the playoffs, get into it, make some noise? And so if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, and these are the conversations they're going to be having today, how aggressive do you get out there? There's not any free agent. You're not getting somebody off the street who's going to keep you afloat. Maybe you sign them as a third quarterback. But in terms of someone who could really help you, all eyes probably around the league are turning to Atlanta and Kirk Cousins. And if the Atlanta Falcons would be willing to part with Kirk Cousins via a trade to the Cincinnati Bengals in order to keep them afloat for the next 2.5, 3 months while Joe Burrow is on the mend.
So, of course, we'll wait to see what the Bengals want to do. But Randy and Leger, I want to ask you guys first. Have either of y'all dealt with turf toe personally?
Yes.
So I'll let both of y'all go. Leger, the look on your face, you're shaking your head. A lot of people, like at home, you might not be able to truly understand what it feels like. Help us know what it's like.
I love that Jonathan Jones said that because people will look at this and say turf toe, Rand. Oh, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
But a turf toe, literally, like you can't put any pressure on your foot. I had it on my left big toe, and I was a undrafted free agent rookie when it happened to me, which is scary, right? Because you don't get as many opportunities. I taped up everything I could, Rand, and went out to practice. Now, the coaches gave me a lot of respect, but I was useless out there at practice. I literally couldn't put any pressure on my foot to get off on the ball. So you think from a quarterback position, when you're rotating and putting pressure and force on that back foot to throw the football, you're not going to be able to do any of that with efficiency if you have the turf toe. So I know a lot of people will say, oh, the turf toe is not a big injury. No, it literally feels like you can barely step on the ground when you have that turf toe.
Think about a turf toe as this. It's you jamming your toe. That's essentially what a turf toe is. But I spoke to a trainer around the league last night, and the 2 ways you treat a turf toe, obviously one is non-surgical and the other is surgical. Brock Purdy has the non-surgical variety, and that's what Jonathan Jones was talking about, where he could miss anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks, depending on the severity of it. But this trainer told me, because I shared some information, I said, hey, look, allegedly Joe Burrow was seen on the scooter. Leger can tell you, having dealt with it, typically they treat it by putting you in a boot.
Correct.
And from putting it in a boot, you could put some pressure on it, maybe have crutches the first couple of days. But allegedly, Joe Burrow was seen last night on a scooter. And when I texted that to the trainer, he said not good, which made me feel that it was going to be what we seeing now, that 3 to 4 month variety. I don't know that he's going to make it back this season. I know they have, the ambition that he can be back for a playoff team. I don't know that he's going to make it back. JJ talked about Kirk Cousins as a potential name. I don't know that the Bengals organization is going to want to take on that number. We'll see what comes there. But another name I want to throw out there is Jimmy Garoppolo. Because right now at the Rams, you have Jimmy Garoppolo, you have Stetson Bennett, who they like a lot. And if you look at the offense that Zach Taylor runs, it's the offense he learned while at the Rams under Sean McVay. So to me, there is no savior out there on the street. There is no savior to go poach from someone's practice squad. But if you're looking in the trade variety, I would think Jimmy Garoppolo's name would come up.
So now with the 3-month timeline, we're assuming and even saying that there's a chance he may not even come back this season.
Right.
You're on the phone this morning. You're not putting your faith in Jake Browning the whole thing still. You need somebody to come in and help you win some games.
No, now here's the thing. Jake Browning is 4-3 as a starter.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I'm not completely throwing him away because you have until October, the trade deadline, to decide where our season is going with Jake Browning. So that is an option. But I do believe that they can win games. Now, I'm not down on the Bengals like everyone else. Yeah, you don't have Joe Burrow, who's arguably potentially one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this league. You don't have him, so things are going to look different. But this is where you're going to have to lean on this running game, and this defense is going to have to continue to step up. Jake Browning has weapons. He has Gesicki. He has T. Higgins. He has Jamar Chase. But they only ran the ball 17 times yesterday. That is going to have to change. You're going to have to lean on this running game and take as much pressure off of Jake Browning. Jake Browning knows in this situation he doesn't have to win the game for this team. He's just got to play efficient football and give them the opportunity to be in the games late.
But he showed you that yesterday, right? Even going through some adversity with those 3 interceptions, that at the end of the drive, he went 9 of 10 and was able to get into the end zone in a quarterback sneak. So there's a lot of faith in Jake Browning in that locker room. Matter of fact, there's so much faith. They didn't really play him throughout the preseason because that's how much faith they have in Jake Browning as well. So they're going to lean on him. You said it, there's no savior. I don't think the Atlanta Falcons, they'd probably be willing to give Kirk Cousins away, but
they would love to.
Yeah, but just looking at the Bengals' history, they don't want to give up that much draft capital or have to pay Kirk Cousins. They already are in cap hell because of their 2 receivers and the quarterback in Joe Burrow. So maybe a guy like Ryan Tannehill as a backup, right, to Jake Browning. He's actually on the streets as well. Maybe they could pick him up as well. I don't think they're going to find a starting quarterback to come in that's going to play better or more efficient than Jake Browning right now, but they definitely need a backup.
Real quick, there was a report last week that Derek Carr is still training.
That's another good name.
Now,
Yeah.
but there's red tape to jump through because he retired and he still had time left
Correct,
on the
on his
contract. So
contract.
those are, but I just want to throw that out there.
JJ, so while we're throwing out names, I want to throw out another one. I did hear you kind of grunt when we said Jimmy Garoppolo, but I want to mention specifically Jameis Winston. What you think about that idea if we're throwing out all the different options?
Yeah, it wouldn't be Jameis Winston for the Cincinnati Bengals for any number of reasons. They have Jake Browning, who just threw 3 interceptions and they somehow won. I don't think they need a quarterback to bring in who could throw 3 more interceptions and see if we can win with him. I mean, all due respect, but I mean that's just the fact of the matter. You continue looking around, and I just want to touch on the guys that these guys just mentioned. Right, Kirk Cousins would be the highest priced one. There's no doubt about it. Taking on his contract, though, maybe you could buy down a little bit. You wouldn't have to spend such a high draft pick. The LA Rams would have to want to part with Jimmy Garoppolo. And you have Matthew Stafford, who looks good 2 games in, but he spent all of the summer in a hyperbaric chamber, and you never know when that back on his 37, 38-year-old body is going to tighten up. So it may be hard to pry Jimmy Garoppolo away from the LA Rams. Anyway, the point is, everyone around the league knows that the Cincinnati Bengals want to get back to the Super Bowl. Everybody knows that they believe in this offense. And so if you were going to trade them a quarterback to help them float until Joe Burrow gets there, it is going to cost them a pretty penny, whether that's draft pick compensation or salary cap space. It's one or the other, and everyone in the league knows it.
Whether it's Jake Browning or somebody else, as we mentioned, as possible options out there. One thing we talked about off camera, you can have all the weapons, but that O-line as well, so it doesn't matter. There's just almost like biting you when it comes to Cincy. You spend all your money on T. Higgins, you paid Joe, you gave Trey his bump. Now it's kind of biting you.
this is why the best teams usually build it from the inside out. We saw the Philadelphia Eagles, right, in their Super Bowl run versus the Kansas City Chiefs last year. The offensive line and defensive line were the reasons why they won the game. Obviously, you have Saquon Barkley, but he had a lot of success because of the offensive line ran. And that was a question mark for the Cincinnati team, right? Spent all this money on the quarterback and the 2 receivers, but the offensive line, and Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with pocket presence. He just knows where the defender is, but you don't want to live in that realm where you're the quarterback and you feel like I only have 2 or 3 seconds to throw the ball because the offensive line isn't protecting for me. And the play he got hurt, the offensive line got whooped on that play where the defensive end, I believe it was Trayvon Walker, grabbed at his ankle, and that's when the foot injury happened. So whether it's Jake Browning, whether it's Joe Burrow, like they have to fortify, and this offensive line has to get better. And they had some injuries early in preseason that hurt the rotation of the offensive line. A couple backups are playing in the interior of the offensive line. So whether it's Browning or whether it's Joe Burrow, like the offensive line has to play significantly better.
Well, if you go all the way back to when they went to the Super Bowl, their offensive line was poor. But you tend to, and this is where you run into these caveats with these franchise quarterbacks, because you feel like they can correct all of the mistakes. Whether it's up front, the really good quarterbacks know what they have in front of them. Know I have to be precise, get the ball out quick. I have to know where I'm going, and that's what we've traditionally seen. He's gotten them off the hook with the offensive line they've had in front of him. But it goes back to something we talked about last night. They've spent so much money at other places that the only way for them to address the offensive line has been through the draft. And these young guys take time to develop, especially transitioning from the college game to the pro game is so different. And so this is where it is. The money is spent at your receiver spot, your defensive end spot, your quarterback spot. They're going to have to keep drafting. But going back to the quarterback thing, Jake Browning and Joe Burrow were the only 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. Brett Rippon was on the practice squad. So you got to imagine he's going to get a bump. They're going to have to address this spot with 1 or 2 guys, and we're going to see that over the next coming days. They're going to probably have a workout here coming up soon.
Yeah, this Sunday on CBS, Vikings and Bengals will play. We'll wrap this up here, Leger. I'm going to ask you straight up in 2023. We saw Joe Burrow go down. They finished 9-8 to the Bengals. Right. What happens this year? Do they make the playoffs or are they cooked?
No, you're not making the playoffs without Joe Burrow. To Rand's point, the reason why they spent the money on his 2 playmakers and him, because they felt like he could handle all the deficiencies on the roster when it comes to the defense really struggling. When it comes to the offense really struggling, I see them going potentially maybe 9-8. Jake Browning will have some ups and downs just like we saw on Sunday. But to Rand's point, he has the offensive weapons. So he'll probably throw for a bevy of yards. He has to protect the football better. And now you're putting more pressure on that young defense who really struggled last year, has played significantly better. But even Sunday's game, they gave him a couple big plays down the field as well. So to me, I don't see the Bengals making the playoffs without Joe Shiesty under the helm at center.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to fall in that 9-8,
right.
8-win type team, because I think that's just the caliber of quarterback that Jake Browning is going to be for them. At the end of the day, you don't have Joe Burrow. And let's be real. If Joe Burrow was there, they probably weren't going to win the division anyway.
Right.
And so that just brings you down a notch. And so, shout out to Jake Browning. I do think that he's going to steady the ship, but I don't think there's going to be enough to lift him as a playoff team.
Yeah, those hits on Vegas taking a hit as well, because they're just not looking too favorable for them to be able to make the playoffs, if you see what the bettors out there are saying.